Welcome back, guys. I'm Zell, and today we're going to find out if the Kershaw Dividend can be de-assisted, and we're going to take it apart and see what you need to do to maintain the knife as well. Alright, put your vote in below. Can it be de-assisted or not? We know there's a detent ball in there. What we don't know is if the detent is strong enough, or even if there is a hole in the blade for the detent ball. So we're going to take this thing apart. Whenever I go to take apart a knife, I generally get out one of these little metal, magnetic, not just metal, but it's magnetic bowls to put the parts in, so that I have, one, a bowl to keep them in, and secondly, magnetic, so that some of them stay in there. And I usually do it on this leather material or something like it, so that if a screw or whatever gets loose, it doesn't have a hard surface to bounce around on. So just some tips there, and let's get to the knife. First thing with a speed safe or any liner lock or frame lock knife is you want to have that knife open whenever you go to work on it. Because if you don't, whenever you go to take the scales off, everything will pop apart and it'll be a big mess because it'll be under the tension from the lock bar. And since we're going to have it open, I'm going to put a piece of tape down the blade so that we don't cut ourselves. Well, I guess you wouldn't cut yourself, would you? But I might. I don't want to be cut. So, we're going to take the pocket clip off first. The pocket clip is a T6. So, pull that off there, and that just, it's not necessary, it just makes doing some of the rest of this stuff easier because the scale can lay flat. There we go, and Kershaw did put some Loctite down in there, that's nice, and they didn't use red, that's even better. And then on this side of the knife, we have a T8 for the pivot, and we have T6 here. So we're going to go ahead and take the pivot screw out. And we'll take the body screws out. These body screws go all the way through to the other handle, or other liner, I guess I should say. And I should be putting them in the magnetic tray, huh? That one's not wanting to come out. We'll see what happens. There, it's out of there. From here, we should be able to lift this side off. And this side has the torsion bar in it. And we also got our stop pin. Watch out for those little stop pins. They can get away from you. Get it in the magnetic bowl as soon as possible so you don't lose that guy. And this is our back spacer. We should get a look at that. And it is just an injection molded back spacer. But, you know, at this price point, I think that's alright. It's a pretty nice looking one. And we have a little phosphor bronze bushing here. We'll go get as we lift the blade out. Lift the blade out. Got the little one on this side because of the speed safe system. And we've got the bigger one over here. We'll go ahead and pop the pivot out. And there's our phosphor bronze bushing from the other side. And here is our detent ball. And that's a rather small detent ball. We'll see. And these pieces come apart, of course, as well. So the big question is there a hole in the other side of the blade for that detent ball? So let's get it up here and flip it over and find out. And no, there isn't. So if you voted no for being able to de-assist the knife, then you were correct. This hole here is not for the detent. This is for the speed safe system. So you can see that arc running around the bottom of the blade here. That is where that little detent ball rides, and there is no detent hole there for it to fall into, so we're not going to be able to de-assist it. So anyhow, we're going to go on with putting it back together. And first thing you want to do is wipe down everything and get all the excess oil goo, whatever off of it. We're not going to go too deeply into that right now because, well, one, there isn't a whole lot. And secondly, we need to get it back together. So, pivot first. Line these two pieces up, and that pivot has a hexagon shape that fits in right there. So, slide it down in here, and then find its home and let it run down flush. And we're going to lay this side flat. That's why we took the pocket clip off, so we could do it this way. And lay that scale flat. We're going to put our stop pin back in to hold everything together because it goes all the way through the aluminum. So everything will be held in place now. And then lay our blade back in. And we're going to have to take these two sides apart because we've got this torsion bar in the middle. But we probably should put our washers in too, huh? Larger washer goes on the non-speed safe side, on the lock bar side. So if you feel it, you want to put the smoothest side toward the blade. And I'm going to put just a little bit of lube there, and that's way more lube than I needed, but that's why we have microfiber claws. Just a little bit of lube. You want it just barely there. And wow, that is Ozark. Has kind of an interesting smell to it. All right, we're going to lay the blade back in on top of that bushing. Put our little back spacer in, and it's going to slide around, but kind of get it in place. And then we want to put our other little bushing, same thing here. Figure out which side you think is smoother. And these are both actually really smooth. Kershaw's done a good job here. But I think I've got it figured out. And then we're going to put just a drop, or we're going to try to put a drop. Yep, well, right there, and that didn't work out good. We stuck it right down the pivot hole. But that's okay. We'll set that on there, and then we want to lay our other scale on. And the reason we didn't put the aluminum handle scale on and just put the liner in here is because we got to lay this. This is the torsion bar. You see that hook in there? It goes right in there. And then we want this laying kind of at the bottom of the grease here. Now, if you've cleaned it all up and you don't have any grease, then you have to make educated guesses. But since we've got the grease still there and we didn't make a mess of it, I'm not going to have to replace it, which if you do have to replace it, white lithium grease, marine grease, works pretty darn good for this. And then we kind of lay that outer scale on there until we get everything inside. And look at it from this side, and yes, everything's mating up pretty good, so we must have been successful. And now this back spacer. The way I do these is I kind of try to figure out where that hole is and stick it in there. And then I've got this screw that will hopefully make it through the back spacer and then hopefully into the other side. And it did. That's a beautiful thing. Do not tighten that up real tight. I got it. Nah, that's going to be okay. Then run it back up here, and hopefully your second screw will fit in good. That one did. That's a beautiful thing. Don't tighten it up real tight either till we've got the third one in. But what do you know? They all come up really nice. And you can put some blue Loctite on those if you'd like. I didn't, but it would probably have been a good idea. We will put some Loctite on the pivot once we figure out if we've got the knife lined up properly. So we got everything back together and need to get the pivot in there. We'll put the pivot in. Get our T8 back. Get that pivot down in there. Kind of snug. And we'll see if that's really snug. See if we can get it to close and see how far off we are. Okay. So that blade is leaning to the non-lock bar side. So we got to use one of our tricks. I think I did a video on this. And because of the way this knife's constructed, what we're going to do is, with this pivot a little loose, we're going to take these just a wee bit loose. They just need to move freely. They don't need to come all the way out. And we're going to close the knife, tighten up our pivot, and while we've got the pivot tight, we're going to hold this blade the way we need it to go, or the way we needed it to go to begin with, and then we're going to tighten up our body screws. Now our blade is leaning a little bit towards the lock bar, so hopefully whenever we loosen this up a bit, it will center right up. Which, lo and behold, it did. That was with the pivot all the way loose. So we'll tighten the pivot up just a little bit, check our action, and now that we've got everything the way it should be, and I'm going to take the pivot out and put a little bit of Loctite on it. Like I've said to you before, I use the blue gel stuff, and I usually get just a toothpick, get a little bit on the toothpick, and then on the pivots I will take the toothpick and stick it right down in there and swirl it around and get that Loctite down in the pivot. Hopefully I got, while I was off camera there, hopefully I got enough of the oil out of there that this stuff will work right. Get it just a bit snug, make sure our action's good, check for blade play, check blade play this way, check blade play this way, make sure everything's good and tight, which it is, and speed safe works good, and then let the knife set. We're done with it. I really appreciate you guys stopping by and getting a look inside the Kershaw Dividend. I know a bunch of you were hoping for a deassistable knife, and you know, it's unfortunate that it's not, but that's what Kershaw does in their medium and lower end of knives, is they make assisted knives. So that's just to be expected. I do agree with a commenter from the other day. I really think that Kershaw needs a second brand, or I guess it'd be a third brand, of knives that fall in the area between ZT and Kershaw. You know, if you ask ZT, they would probably say that that's their US made knives that have got the Sandvik steel in them, but I would like to see them run across the line, like taking this Dividend, which is a really, really nice design. And sure, having this one at around 30 bucks or so is beautiful, but if we had this same knife at, say, 70 bucks, and we got S30V, and maybe titanium instead of aluminum, or maybe some G10, and a deep carry pocket clip, and then go on ahead and make a ZT out of it. And with the ZT, move us up to some really good steel, some M390 or something, and give us a really nice pocket clip, something that's been, you know, a milled titanium clip, titanium handle scales with some flourishes or something in them, and a ball bearing pivot. You know, give the knife 3 levels instead of just giving us one version of it. I think that could do Kershaw well if they would consider that. Anyhow, I really appreciate you guys stopping by and hanging out with me and getting a look inside the Kershaw Dividend. You guys have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.